Welcome to another episode of People L Pod.
Glad to be here.
So to start us off today, I actually want you to just picture something in your mind for a second. It's a seemingly simple image, right?
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Just a square painted in this really off-putting, slightly garish, almost like sickly shade of lime green.
Right, yeah.
And right in the middle of it, overlaid in this blurry, low-resolution, completely standard Arial font, is just a single word.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It honestly looks like something you could make in, I don't know, about 5 seconds on a broken computer from 1998.
It genuinely looks like a rendering error, or like, at the very least, a deeply careless afterthought by someone who just completely forgot they had an album cover due that afternoon.
Exactly. But here is the central mystery we are diving into today, looking at this massive stack of articles and notes he sent over.
Yeah, there's a lot to get through.
How did that minimalist, intentionally ugly album cover become the defining cultural aesthetic of 2024?
It's wild to think about.
I mean, we are talking about a blurry green square that somehow dictated global fashion trends, swept the Grammy Awards, and even managed to infiltrate major international political campaigns.
It really was everywhere.
So today, we are taking a deep dive into Charli XCX's 6th studio album, Brat.
Yeah, and our mission today for this deep dive, based on all the research you compiled for us, is to really unpack this as a masterclass in modern cultural phenomena.
Right.
We're examining how raw, messy authenticity completely disrupted an era of, overly polished, highly curated pop culture.
Because it really did disrupt everything.
Absolutely, because if you want to understand what the world was actually craving in 2024, you kind of have to look at the mechanics of this garish green square, and more importantly, the specific sonic landscape that it represented.
Okay, let's unpack this, because looking through these music criticism pieces you highlighted, before we can even touch the viral marketing or the memes or any of that, we have to understand the music itself.
Oh, for sure. The music is the foundation.
Right, and Charli XCX has been a pretty significant force in pop for a long time, but with Brat, she made this massive, jarring pivot.
Yeah, she really spun the wheel.
Because her previous album in 2022, Crash, was very accessible. It was a very glossy, traditional pop record.
It was very much playing the mainstream pop game.
Exactly. And then she just completely abandons that for something that sounds like you are sweating in an illegal basement club at like 3 in the morning.
Yeah, and to understand why she made that pivot, we kind of have to look at her origins. Her roots are firmly planted in the illegal 2000s London rave scene.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that is where she started performing when she was literally just a teenager, playing in these dirty, crowded underground warehouses.
That makes so much sense given how Brat sounds.
Right, and with this album, she and her core producers, people like A.G. Cook and Circa Cook, they basically went back into that exact environment. They built a sonic profile, utilizing electropop, electroclash, and hyperpop.
Let me stop you right there because those genre names get thrown around a lot in these articles, and I think we should clarify how they actually function.
Yeah, good point.
When we say hyperpop or electroclash, what is actually happening mechanically in the music?
So it's really about subverting expectations. Traditional pop music is usually built on smooth, melodic resolution, right? It wants to sound nice.
Right. It wants to resolve in a satisfying way.
Exactly. But hyperpop takes those catchy, earworm pop structures and just stretches them to their absolute breaking point.
It almost sounds aggressive.
It is. It uses heavy, blown-out bass and this metallic percussion that literally sounds like someone hitting a trash can with a lead pipe. And the vocals are synthetic and pitch-shifted.
It's like it physically creates a feeling of anxiety and urgency for you as a listener.
Yeah, and then electroclash brings in this gritty punk rock attitude mixed with cheap synthesizers. So what Charli and her producers did was use a very tight, minimalist collection of these really harsh sounds.
They aren't layering 100 string instruments or anything.
No, not at all. They are taking maybe 3 or 4 really aggressive synthetic noises and just pushing them to maximum volume.
It creates this incredibly confrontational atmosphere. You know, when I was listening through the tracks you recommended, I just kept coming back to this analogy.
Wow. What was it?
It's like taking your most private, anxiety-ridden, deeply embarrassing diary entries and just screaming them over a 140 BPM flashing lights club beat.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Honestly, that leads directly into the contradiction at the absolute heart of why this album became such a massive phenomenon.
Because the music itself was so intensely vulnerable, right? And it was overcrowded with her own insecurities.
Yes, exactly.
Like, you have an album called Brat. The visual branding is aggressive. The music is this heavy, thumping, anxious club sound.
It's very in your face.
But when you strip away the bass and actually listen to the words she is singing, it is incredibly tender.
It really is.
It's messy, and honestly, it is heartbreaking in several places.
Let's actually walk through the specific tracks you flagged in your notes, because I think this is where the album entirely transcends the traditional dance floor experience.
Yeah, let's do it.
Take the track. I think about it all the time.
Yeah.
Sonically, it is a driving club track. You want to dance to it.
Right.
But lyrically, Charli is wrestling with her biological clock.
Which is wild for a club song.
I know. She wrote it after meeting her friend and collaborator, Noonie Bao's new baby.
Which is such a jarring juxtaposition. You know, she is contemplating this massive existential dread, the societal programming around motherhood, all while the beat behind her is just aggressively demanding that you dance.
Yeah, and in one of the interviews you provided, she explicitly says, quote, "Am I less of a woman if I don't have a kid? Will I feel like I've missed out on my purpose in life?"
No.
She acknowledges that female pop stars aren't really supposed to say those things out loud.
Oh, right.
Especially not in a club anthem. But she calls it out anyway as both a biological panic and social programming.
And it doesn't stop with existential dread either. There is a track called So I, which is this totally naughty, unresolved exploration of grief.
Yeah, that one is heavy. It's specifically her grief over the late producer Sophie, who was a massive pioneer in the hyperpop space and one of Charli's closest collaborators.
A very raw look at loss.
Very raw. She admits in the song to pushing Sophie away because she felt intimidated by her talent. Like, she is actively airing her own ugliest traits on this record.
And then she turns that exact same magnifying glass onto her industry relationships, too. Like, Sympathy is a Knife is widely speculated to be an unfiltered look at her complicated insecurities regarding Taylor Swift and Maddie Healy.
Mm-hmm. People definitely obsessed over those lyrics.
But the absolute peak of this vulnerability, I think, has to be the track Girl. So confusing.
Oh, absolutely. It is arguably the thesis statement of the album's emotional core.
Right.
It is a track entirely dedicated to dissecting a contentious, super confusing relationship with a fellow female pop star.
And initially, listeners were analyzing every single lyric, right? Trying to guess who it was about people suspected Marina or Rina Sawayama.
Yeah, the internet was going crazy trying to decode it.
But it turned out to be about Lorde. Now, I have to interject here, though, because looking at the mechanics of this isn't heavy club music historically designed for mindless escapism.
Generally, yeah, that's the stereotype.
Right. The entire point of going to a rave in a dark warehouse is to forget your problems, not to confront your ticking biological clock, your unresolved grief, and your professional jealousy. Why bring all this heavy, exhausting baggage to the dance floor?
See, that subversion is exactly why it worked.
Okay, how so?
By pairing inescapable heavy personal realities with the escapist sounds of a rave, she engineered something entirely new. She created what critics called a post-Saturn return anthem for early 30s anxiety.
Oh, that's a great phrase.
It worked because it felt so authentic to the specific demographic she was speaking to. You know, you're out dancing, you're trying to have fun, but you were also acutely aware of the messiness of being alive and getting older.
Like, you can't escape your brain, even in the club.
Exactly. And the ultimate payoff of that messiness is how the Lorde situation resolved.
Oh, gosh, yes. Because instead of issuing a PR statement or starting some toxic Twitter feud, which is what the music industry machinery usually demands, Lorde actually jumps on the remix of the song.
It's so cool. They essentially go to couples therapy over an electroclash beat.
Yes.
They're just working out their misunderstandings and mutual jealousies on the track itself.
It is a brilliant resolution. It takes the paralyzing vulnerability of the original track and transforms it into this genuine human connection.
Definitely. And, you know, because the music was so overcrowded with her own insecurities and these dense lyrical confessions, Charli needed a visual identity that did the exact opposite.
Right. She needed a blank, aggressive canvas that offered zero visual information, which perfectly explains why she completely refused to put her face on the cover.
That choice was a profound statement in itself. She was actively challenging the expectation that female pop artists must always leverage their bodies and faces to sell their art.
Which is so common in the industry.
Always. And in the social media posts you included in our research, she had previously called this expectation, quote, misogynistic and boring.
Good for her.
Yeah, she was questioning why fans feel this intense ownership over female artists, where they are basically demanding a glamorous, highly stylized photograph on every single piece of work.
So instead of a glamorous photo shoot, we get the green square.
We get the green square.
Now, I have to challenge something in your notes here, because I'm looking at this interview with the New York-based design studio, Special Offer, Inc., and their designer, Brent David Freeney.
Okay, yeah.
They claim this blurry green square took 5 months of development.
They do claim that, yes.
I have to be honest with you, that sounds like a deeply pretentious post-rationalization for a team that blew a deadline and had to mock something up in Microsoft Paint at the last minute.
It sounds totally ridiculous on paper.
Right. How do you justify 5 months of work for a blurry Arial font?
I completely understand the skepticism, I really do. But the metadata and the design process logs you provided actually back up the timeline.
Really? 5 months?
5 months,
Yeah.
because they were engineering a very specific psychological reaction. Let's start with the color. Freeney examined over 500 different shades of green,
500 shades of green.
and they eventually landed on Pantone 30507C.
Okay, so what is so special about Pantone 30507C?
It physically clashes with the human eye.
Oh, wow.
Charli noticed that green was heavily oversaturated in media and fashion right then, but usually in very earthy, pleasant, natural tones.
Like sage green, olive green.
Exactly. She specifically demanded an offensive, off-trend shade to subconsciously trigger the idea of something being, like, wrong or unhealthy. The ratio of yellow to green in Pantone 35007C makes it look slightly toxic.
She literally stated she was not doing things to be nice. She wanted to provoke people and force them to ask why some aesthetics in pop culture are considered good and acceptable, while others are just deemed bad or lazy.
Precisely. And the typography was subjected to that exact same agonizing level of scrutiny.
Even the blurry text.
Yes, they chose a font based on Arial, specifically because it lacked any precious or artistic feeling whatsoever.
It is the visual equivalent of a dial tone. It's so utterly standard that it forces you to focus entirely on the message rather than the messenger.
Exactly. They explicitly wanted to move away from trendy, tasteful typefaces like Helvetica or custom serif fonts.
Right.
They then stretched the Arial text slightly to give it this awkward personality and placed it off-center.
Not small and tasteful in the corner, and not large and loud taking up the whole square either.
Nope. They were actively aiming for what they called an opinionless look.
Anti-design as high art. Okay, I buy it now.
Right.
And honestly, how they translated this digital aesthetic into the physical world was a total masterclass in guerrilla marketing. We have to talk about the Brat Wall in Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
Oh, the Brat Wall was amazing. It was a physical brick wall that they operated almost like a live digital newsfeed.
Which is such a funny concept.
It really is. They painted the entire side of this building in that exact toxic Pantone 3507C green.
But they didn't just cane a billboard and leave it. They treated physical masonry like a Twitter account.
Yeah.
They would constantly send actual painters out there to update the wall with cryptic, blurry text. First it said, "I'm your 5 reference," which was a lyric.
Right.
Then it just said Brat. Then, when they announced the deluxe edition of the album, which, by the way, has the most incredibly messy, unpolished title ever.
Oh, it's so funny.
Brat, and it's the same. But there's 3 more songs, so it's not.
It's so unhinged.
They literally painted the wall white with that exact run-on sentence.
It created a physical destination for all the digital hype. It just kept evolving. When the Lord remix was about to drop, the wall just said, Lord.
People must have been constantly checking that wall.
They were. Eventually, at the end of the promotional cycle, they just painted Okay Bye on it.
That's incredible.
It proved that you don't need million-dollar CGI campaigns to build hype. You just need intentional, lo-fi aesthetic choices that invite people into an inside joke.
Which, as we know, sparks the absolute cultural explosion of Brat Summer. Looking at the articles you gathered, this aesthetic completely escaped the gravity of the music industry.
It became a global viral sensation.
Fans built a Brat generator website so anyone could type their name into the blurry green square. The London Eye was lit up in lime green. Collins English Dictionary literally named Brat the 2024 Word of the Year.
And Forbes named it a top pop culture moment.
But the true testament to how far this aesthetic penetrated the global consciousness is when it crossed over into international politics.
Yeah, that was the moment it really cemented its legacy.
And let's look at this purely from a strategic marketing perspective based on the timelines in your sources. We are just observing the cultural mechanics here impartially.
Exactly, just looking at the facts.
In the UK, during their general election, the Green Party adopted the exact album cover style, the blurry font, the specific green background for a Vote Green social media campaign.
And the crossover was even more aggressive in the United States. Following Joe Biden's decision to withdraw from the 2024 presidential election, the dynamic shifted entirely.
Right.
Charli XCX tweeted a three-word phrase, Kamala IS Brat.
Which instantly sent the internet into overdrive.
They broke the internet.
And the Biden-Harris campaign team recognized the momentum immediately. They rebranded their official campaign profile on X to Kamala HQ and changed their banner image to perfectly imitate the Brat album cover.
The lime green background, the blurry Arial font replacing the word Brat with Kamala HQ.
From a digital marketing standpoint, it was an incredibly swift hijacking of a youth-driven cultural trend to generate immediate enthusiasm for a political campaign.
It was very fast. Now, the sources do note that Charli later clarified her tweet in a subsequent interview.
That's an important detail.
Yeah, she stated she was not making an explicit political endorsement. She said, quote, I'm not Bob Dylan.
Which is a fair point.
However, she did add that she was happy to help prevent democracy from failing forever. But regardless of any individual political leanings, what we are observing is how an underground club album's aesthetic became a recognized, highly effective tool in international political discourse.
It is staggering to trace that trajectory. You go from writing songs about sweaty, illegal London raves to providing the visual banner for a presidential campaign.
It's quite a leap.
Which brings us to the ultimate legacy of the album. Because for an artist who built her entire brand on feeling like an edgy outsider, she suddenly found herself standing at the very center of the establishment.
Yeah, the commercial and critical achievements of Brat are undeniable. It debuted at number 3 in the U.S. on the Billboard 200, which was the highest debut of her entire career.
Wow.
It hit number 1 in the U.K., Australia, Ireland, and New Zealand. And critically, it was an absolute juggernaut. It became the highest-rated album of 2024 on Metacritic, securing a score of 95 out of 100.
To put that in perspective for you, a 95 out of 100 is almost unheard of for a heavy dance pop record. The critics usually reserve those scores for prestige acoustic singer-songwriters, you know.
Exactly.
And then, of course, come the accolades, which creates this fascinating tension.
It is the ultimate paradox of the Brat era. On the deluxe edition of the album, there's a track called Spring Breakers, where Charli specifically sings about how her messy, edgy attitude bars her from prestigious music industry events like the Grammy Awards.
But then what happens?
In 2025, she won 3 Grammys,
Amazing.
including Best Dance Electronic Album and, hilariously, Best Recording Package for that very green square we've been discussing.
The 5-minute paint job wins a Grammy.
Yes. She also swept the Brit Award for British Album of the Year.
I find this dynamic so interesting. Can an era that is strictly defined by messy underground rebellion, by anxiety and grit, actually survive becoming the ultimate mainstream success?
It's a tough balance.
I mean, the moment you win 3 Grammys, you are no longer the underdog pushing against the machine. You are the machine.
And Charli seems acutely aware of that exact paradox. In the notes you provided about her Coachella performance in April of 2025, there's a very deliberate visual cue.
Oh, right, the visual change.
Yeah, during her set, she didn't project the pristine, viral green square on the screens. She projected a new version of the cover. The letters had these harsh scribbles over them. And later, if you looked on streaming services, the digital album cover was actually modified to look like it was made of brown, decaying metallic rust.
A rusted, corroding version of the Brat green. It is a brilliant visual metaphor.
Yeah, it really is.
She is basically acknowledging that the shiny, viral moment has passed and the metal is starting to oxidize.
It was widely interpreted by critics as her hinting at the end of the Brat era. But, you know, when she was asked about it directly in an interview with Vanity Fair in late 2025, she admitted a somewhat helpless truth about modern fame.
What did she say?
She said she doesn't actually get to decide when the era is over. She told them, quote, I think that's up to the world. It will eventually exist as a relic.
Which I think brings us back to why this entire phenomenon matters to begin with.
Absolutely.
Brat proved that in a media environment where we are constantly force-fed, highly curated, sanitized, flawless representations of life, the public was actually starving for the exact opposite.
People were desperate for something that looked a little ugly, sounded a little aggressive, and felt brutally, uncomfortably honest.
It functioned as a massive cultural rejection of the curated self.
Yes.
It gave people permission to be incredibly complicated. You know, you could be grieving a friend, you could be intensely insecure about your career, you could be terrified of getting older, and you could still want to go out and sweat in a club.
The garish green square wasn't just a clever marketing gimmick. It was a mirror reflecting our collective exhaustion with having to present a perfect aesthetic all the time.
You know, reading through your notes, it makes me think about where this leads us next.
How so?
Well, if we project this trend forward, think about the rapid rise of generative AI.
Okay. Yeah.
Right now, AI makes everything flawless. It generates images with perfect lighting, perfect symmetry, perfect grammar.
It's completely sterile.
Exactly. In a very short amount of time, absolute perfection is going to be the hallmark of a machine.
Right.
Which means to prove human authenticity, we might be entering a world where humans have to start using intentional mistakes.
Oh, well.
Like we might have to rely on messy, garish, blurry choices like a stretched Arial font on a sickening green background just to prove to each other that we are actually alive and human.
That is, wow. That's really something to think about.
Something to chew on the next time you try to perfectly filter a photo.
Thanks for listening to PayPal Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.